Welcome to this director's commentary of the Case of the Curious Client book trailer. I'm T.G.Campbell and I am the writer, producer and director of the book trailer itself, which is based upon the first book in the Bow Street Society mystery series of the same name. It was filmed exactly 1 year ago this month at Milton Keynes Museum. It has Daniel Toal as Mr. Oswald Baldwin from the Glasgow Gazette and Miss Sabrina Poole as Miss Rebecca Trent, who is the clerk of the Bow Street Society. It was filmed on location using the museum's hallway and parlour in their Victorian farmhouse. So before we begin, the scene in the trailer begins with Miss Trent having let Mr. Baldwin into the house, and you can just for a brief second see her walking into the parlour while he sort of loiters and has a good look round, being a journalist and particularly being a character from the books who is a bit more of a villain. He would obviously want to see what the setup is, especially for her being a woman in charge of a group of detectives. So he very much is just having a little nose around to see if there's anything that he could possibly uncover in terms of dirt for his readers. So that's why when the trailer begins in a moment, you do hear footsteps ahead of Mr. Baldwin, and they are of Sabrina walking into the parlour and to collect a newspaper while she is waiting for him to join her. So we'll just begin the trailer now. So as I say, you can see him walking in there, then the camera switches to him from the front. I did actually want to use the shot of following him into the room, going to the item, and sort of then being interrupted by Miss Trent like this. But at the time you could see the lighting that we used for the book trailer in the mirror, so unfortunately I was unable to use that otherwise perfect shot. This part of him sitting down and her turning around with the newspaper was all improvised by Daniel Toal and Sabrina Poole during rehearsals. So they had the script, but the actual action itself was improvised completely by them. The sound was synced up to the images by my cinematographer James Westlake, but the sound itself was recorded by sound recordist Darius J. I then edited all the visuals together. Hawk-eyed viewers will notice that on the sofa behind Miss Trent in this shot, you may be able to see a copy of the book just tucked low underneath one of the pillows. Again, that stays there throughout the entire segment. Miss Poole and Mr. Toal very much wanted to show Miss Trent's strength of character in this section, hence why she very much sort of looks at him with a bit of disdain. She doesn't understand why he's there. He's very much there to try to get some dirt on the Bow Society and to challenge why they even exist in. Again, this shot of her walking away, talking to him, and then sort of basically just putting herself above him was again improvised by Daniel Toal and Miss Poole. I very much like this shot of her going into the cabinet and getting the report. We were very fortunate in that we were able to interact with all the exhibits and items and furniture that were in the parlour. The museum was very gracious in letting us do that. Obviously that meant that we were able to add that bit of more authenticity to the scene. We had to remove explanatory notes from the walls beneath the paintings and pictures in order to make it avoid looking like a museum as it is.
Mr. Baldwin, or nothing at all. Make your choice.
So that shot of her walking towards the window was to suggest to Mr. Baldwin that she was about to leave the room so he could read it in private, but then her actually then purposely walking back to the chair was again just showing to him that she was the one in full control. This next segment was created before we filmed the live action piece. The illustrations were created by my usual illustrator, Mr. Peter Spells. The narrative that you can hear over the top was done by Mr. Tim Wells, a talented voiceover artist, and it is meant to represent Mr. Gregory Elliott, one of the members of the Bow Society. He is a solicitor and very much sort of black and white sort of individual in the way he sees the world. This was intended to draw the viewer into the scene and into the house itself. So this is the murder that takes place at the big centre of the main book, the first book in the series. That is Mr. Perkins on the floor. This house actually becomes the Bow Society's headquarters in the end. That's Mr. Thaddeus Dorsey on the bed. I did originally wanted to have an animation of his head turning, but I just found that it was just too complex technically for me to be able to do that. These are again scenes from the book. The music was created for this section by Illitchi Kari Studio, very talented composer. And Mr. Lanford Glasgow's voiceover was done by another very talented voiceover artist, Collen. Again, this is all to draw the viewer in. It's also to sort of explain a bit more about the book itself, where the first section, the live action piece, was actually more to explain about the Bow Street Society as an entity in itself. So yeah, Collen Chandler was the voiceover for Mr. Lanford Glasgow. I used Admiral Costumes for the props that they have, and for the costumes themselves. That's a lot of fun, taking Sabrina and Mr. Toal to the costume place to try those on and pick those. The rehearsals, costume fitting, and the film itself all took place over the course of one weekend. And again, I'd like to thank Milton Keynes Museum for letting them use their location, and also Milton Keynes Central Library for the use of their meeting rooms for rehearsals. And don't forget that you can discover more at bowstreetsociety.com. Thank you for listening. Bye!